What is up, beautiful people of the world? Welcome to AI in Operations. So today, what I'm going to go through is NotebookLM, and this is such an amazing tool. I wish that I had this tool when I was in the parking industry and I had to create forecasting for budgets. Like I had to forecast like what was going to happen. So in order for me to forecast budgets, I had to look at trends, right? So I had to go back to calendars. I had to look at rate sheets. I had to look at what was going on around my garage, right? Like around my facility, my location. Were there any events? How was the weather, right? So I had to look at historical data, compare it to the weather, to the calendar, to maybe construction in the area. So many different elements that I needed to take into consideration when I was putting these budgets together. And so, when I think about what I used to do then without artificial intelligence and what I can do today, I would have definitely just hit the ball out of the park, right? Now, I will say I did pretty good, but this would have saved so much time. And I was taking a look at Notebook LM, right? Now, a lot of people use it for many different reasons, whether they monetize on it, whether they use it just to do research, whether they use it just to create content, whatever the case is. For me, I talk about protecting profits. I talk about money leaking out of your business. I talk about systems, processes, optimization. How do we work better, right? How do we make things work more efficient, right? Cut out all the inefficiencies in your process so that you can increase your bottom line, make sure that your bottom line or keep the money, more of the money that you make, right? So I want to get into how I would have used Notebook LM if I was still in the parking industry managing a portfolio. So let's get into it. So here we have Notebook LM. Now, this gives you various ways, resources to basically put in, right? Now, I've created just some mock data based on, my experience in the parking industry, right? And so I'm going to upload some files. And here I have a couple of uh data sets, I guess, if you will, right? So I'm going to just select all four of them. So I have competing garage pricing, right, for a 1 mile radius, right? So when I was in the parking industry, we used to have to, especially in New York, in the New York market, we would have to produce rate sheets, right? More times than I'd like to talk about. Event calendars, if there's any events in the area, historical occupancy, which is crucial for when you are forecasting, and then a rate sheet. So let's just upload all of these sources into the notebook, right? And so once you do that, what the notebook is going to do, it's going to automatically give it a title. You can change it if you'd like, but we're going to keep it at parking garage, competitive and operational data, right? Now, what Notebook LM has done first is it took all of the resources you see here on the left side, right? And what it did was it gave me kind of a synopsis, if you will, of just the information that is on those data sets or sheets, right? So this is all great information for when you're trying to forecast a budget or you're just trying to understand what's going on in your operation. All good information, right? So the first one we're going to do is I'm going to put in this prompt and I'm going to say analyze the historical occupancy data sets alongside the current rate sheet and competitor pricing. Identify any periods where occupancy exceeds 80% while pricing is equal to or lower than nearby competitors. Flag any time blocks where demand clearly outpaces price for each underpriced period. Explain the likely cause, quantify the revenue left on the table, and recommend a revised rate strategy that aligns with market elasticity. So, that is what I want to know to detect the underpriced periods. So now we're just going to hit the little arrow on the side. So now what it's doing is checking the files and to be able to give me a response based on that prompt, right? Based on my question about I need to understand I want to detect underpriced periods, right? So it's reviewing all of the sources. And now it says, based on the analysis of the historical occupancy data, rate sheets, and competitor pricing, three specific time blocks have been identified where demand exceeds 80% occupancy while prices remain significantly below market potential. So, number one, this was done in under 60 seconds. All I did was upload information, enter a prompt based on what I want to know, right? And it came back to me with with this stuff. Now, can you do this in ChatGPT? Absolutely. But the reason why I like Notebook LM is because now we are creating a project in its own. So this is for competitive and operational data. I want to analyze my data, but then I also want to build forecasting with it, and I also want it all in one central location. But then with that said, we also here have on the right side, we have Studio that we can do a lot more with, right? So we'll get into that. But for now, I want to show you what the data output looks like from Notebook LM. So let's get into it. The Saturday event surge, critical underpricing. So it says that the time block, August 2nd, um, occupancy was at 94%, which basically means that out of 650 spaces that the garage has occupancy, 610 spaces were filled, right? So the current price is $25, right? So it was a weekend flat rate or $18 event special. The competitor benchmark, which was Grove Street Plaza, charges $35 for an event rate, right? Now, it says the likely cause is that the surge coincides with the Bad Bunny concert at the Waterfront Arena, noted as a high impact event expected to drive traffic between 1800 and 20. Okay, this is giving me military time. I don't like, I have been dealing with numbers my entire life, but don't ask me to do math in my head. I'm just putting it out there. Anyway, the garage is functioning as overflow for the arena, but is charging standard rates rather than event premiums. Revenue left on the table. Well, Hudson Point is underpriced by at least $10 per vehicle compared to the Grove Street Plaza benchmark. The calculation is that 610 vehicles multiplied by 10 priced difference equals 6,100 lost in a single evening. If customers are utilizing the $18 evening special rate instead of the weekend flat rate, the loss increase is $10,370. So that's $17 gap times 610 vehicles. So the strategy is implement a dynamic event rate of $35 to $40 for arena nights, eliminate this event special and weekend flat rate on designated high impact dates listed in the calendar, right? So, for example, the upcoming UFC's fight on August 30th. Since Grove Street has limited peak capacity, Hudson Point can capture overflow traffic even at a matched price point of $35 due to the high volume of attendees, which is 650 spaces versus limited competitor space. So again, it says since Grove Street has limited peak capacity, Hudson Point can capture that overflow, right? So it's telling you you can capture that overflow from that other garage. All of this, all of the stuff that I used to do in parking, and it would take me some time. I'd have to pull the reports, look at them, kind of create my own like spreadsheet, figure it out, do all the things, and then come up with this kind of, uh, word written type of explanation, right? And so here we have it in seconds. The evening weekend theater rush. So now it goes into again telling you the weekday, right? So this one, the first one was the Saturday event surge, and now this one is the weekday evening theater rush. It goes through the same process where it's giving you the time block, the occupancy, the pricing, the competitor benchmark, the likely causes, the revenue left on the table, right? Protect your profit. The revised strategy telling you what you should do. Now, again, this is artificial intelligence. It only gives you what you get, it only produces what you give it, what you ask it, right? But this is a great way to not only save time, but also to give you clarity on your operation. This goes for anything. It's not only parking, but parking is something that I absolutely loved. Operations and operations is in every single business. So in this case, It is the same concept, whether you have a product or service, right? The concept is the same. You're just changing a couple of the kind of the way that you do it, but the concept, the approach is still the same when you're trying to understand forecasting, right? Because data does not lie. Historical data is your gold mine and also your crystal ball. All right. Now, the next thing that was for detecting underpriced periods, right? Now, what if I said I want to have some recommendations for event rate adjustments, right? And so I'm going to use a different prompt that I have here, right? And I'm going to say, review the event calendar and overlay each event's expected demand with the garage historical occupancy during similar event types. Identify which events justify a special event rate, a tiered event rate, or a time-bound surge. Provide recommended pricing for each event, the ideal activation window, and an estimated revenue lift. Note any events where the current rate structure is misaligned with projected demand. So let's see what it gives us. Now, one thing I will tell you guys is that when you do um, get an output from your prompt, you need to make sure that you save the note. You save the note and it will populate over here in your studio side. Again, studio is something that we can go into further, but this is a great starting point. So now what it's doing, it's going through the documents again, it's going through the information to give you that output. And here, hello, how quick is this? Like, come on. All right, so based on the overlay of the event calendar, historical date, occupancy, and competitor pricing, the following analysis categorizes each event into the appropriate pricing strategy. So it says here, so for this special event, let's scroll back up. The special event rate, which is the high impact capacity risks, these events drive demand that pushes occupancy above 90%, creating a seller's market. The current weekend flat and evening special rates result in significant revenue leakage during these periods. Bad Bunny concert, UFC fight, the data overlay. So it says projected demand, high impact with spikes from 1800 to, so I think that's like 6 a.m., right? I mean, 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. Historical evidence on August 2nd, occupancy hit 94%, which is 610 spaces for the Bad Bunny concert. Misalignment, Hudson Point currently charges $25 weekend flat rate or $18 event special. So the competitor benchmark Grove Street Plaza activates a $35 event rate, right? The strategy that is recommended, again, increasing that rate and activating it during the window of the time frame, right? So whether that's 5 o'clock to I don't know what time that is. What is that? 11 p.m., right? So the action is suspend the $18 evening special entirely on these dates. The garage functions as an overflow for the waterfront arena since Harborside, which is the cheap option, is overfilled and Grove Street has limited capacity. Hudson Point can match the $35 premium. So the estimated revenue lift would be current revenue, which is approximately 600 cars times the $18 evening special, which is about 10,800. Optimized revenue would be 600 cars at $35 for each car at an event rate, which totals about $21,000. So your lift is $10,000, $10,200 per event. It then goes into, so that was first the special event rate, right? Then it's giving you the time bound surge. These events create sharp demand spikes during specific hours. The goal is to force customers onto the standard hourly rate, which is higher, rather than allowing them to utilize the discounted flat rates. So all of that comes from the numbers that don't lie and just the trends, right? Stuff that we've all been doing manually all of this time, but how do we leverage artificial intelligence to help us make informed decisions faster, right? We want to be able to tackle this type of stuff faster. Um, but remember that artificial intelligence is only as good as the knowledge that you have. So I always say it's AI plus your expert, right? Because if I did not ever work in parking, I would not even know that this was a thing. I wouldn't even know what type of questions to ask. I wouldn't, if I wasn't in operations, I wouldn't understand. what am I looking at? Why am I, what is the output I need to get out from artificial intelligence? So it's AI plus your expert. So it goes into the time bound. So it says the theater district had a new play release on August 5th. It says the projected demand was medium. The historical evidence on August 5th, the occupancy was about 92% at a given time. Misalignment was that the $18 special at night, and then it gives you the strategy. Black out the evening special from said time to said time and activate it from said time to said time, right? So customers entering the theater that are staying between 2 to 4 hours will pay the standard $24 rate. This undercuts the Grove Street location, right? While securing by which is $28. So you're securing $6 more per car than the current special rate. So now it gives you that revenue lift. The current revenue would be 500 cars times that $18, which is $9,000. And then the revenue that is optimized after, right? It goes up to 12,000. So now your lift, right, is that $3,000, right? So this is again a great starting point, a great tool to now use and leverage for your operation, especially if you're in the parking industry, because there's so many different reports that you have to pull together to be able to actually produce just one thing, right? Now, if you wanted to say you wanted to forecast, right? Now, all of this information is what leads to that forecasting, right? So obviously we have to go through more prompts. We have to get more output from the tool, right? So that we can actually save all of this information and then be able to utilize it when we're creating our forecasted budget, right? So what you would want to do is you want to lock in your baseline, right? Um, you want to take your historical data and you want to take, so say you want to take the average daily revenue, you want to take your average hourly revenue, you want to take your average occupancy by segment. So what does that mean? That means like weekday, weekend, event, non-event, and then you want a current yield per space, right? So it's the revenue divided by the total spaces available. And then that baseline becomes that control that you have for measuring that lift, which is just that extra money that you can make when you put in your new pricing strategy, right? Because what happens is that most operators, they skip that step and then they wonder why their forecasting doesn't hold. So the baseline is really what anchors everything. Now, how do you apply this to your Notebook LM, right? So from the insights that Notebook LN generates, you want to identify the new recommended rates, right? You want to identify the hours or the event to get the new prices. You want to note that expected occupancy impacts, right? You want to note all of these positives and or neutrals, right? So you basically rewrite the revenue curve using all of the information that Notebook LM gave you, right, through the pricing windows, and then you, for example, like the event upcharges, the evening rate adjustments, the weekend enhancements, the slow period promotions. Think of this as your future rate sheet, which is based on performance and it's not guesswork, right? Because I will tell you, putting rate sheets together was probably the worst thing ever. There were a lot of other things that were very tedious, but the rate sheet part was a little, and a lot of times the rates didn't really change much, but you still had to go and look at the rates, right? So now that we have artificial intelligence, it's so easy to pull that stuff together. And what if you don't have robust tools in your operation? At the very least, if you gather all the data and then just plug it into something like a Notebook LM, it can kind of create that kind of like that brain for you, right? So now you want to take your projected occupancy curves from Notebook LM and turn them into actual revenue assumptions, right? So for each time bucket, which is forecast, expected occupancy, apply the recommended rate, calculate your revenue per hour, and then you want to roll that up to daily, weekly, and monthly totals, because now what this does, it becomes your version A of your budget, right? Now, step 4, what you want to do is you want to stress test, right? So a real parking budget always has conservative scenarios, realistic scenarios, aggressive scenarios, all based around just kind of different models, if you will. So what this does, it protects you when you're presenting the forecast like to leadership, right? Because you really want like the realism part of all of this. Like you want like, the numbers don't lie. So you got to make sure that you produce something that is realistic. And then you want to integrate any other variables, right? So this means like, um, if you want to kind of fold in like event volume fluctuations or competitor pricing changes or seasonal patterns or construction right, I talked about that earlier, any construction or traffic patterns that may change, monthly Parker churns or acquisitions, right? You want to add all of that stuff in. All of that information is so important, especially in this type of industry where every dollar, every minute is a dollar. Every minute costs, right? So there, in the parking industry, you're constantly always looking at revenue based on time. And then you want to build the annual revenue forecast, right? So now you roll that all up into a 12-month budget, right? So now you have your monthly revenue by Parker, hourly, daily, monthly, your event premiums. You want to project your projected new demand during your high value hours, projected lift from your optimization, right? So when you've gotten that recommendation and you kind of looked at it, right? Now you want to have that as well into your annual revenue forecast. And then the output would look like monthly revenue forecast, the year over year. You want to have your occupancy utilization curve, and you want to have your rate impact summary, right? So that is really what you want to look at like kind of like a senior level, right? So um the story behind your numbers, right? So when you're drafting your budget, right, it creates a strong narrative that includes like why the adjustments were made, right? Like how pricing aligns with the demand and expected, like what the expected new revenue sources are, like operational impacts and the risk mitigation, right? So when you present this stuff, you can also have Notebook LM give you that explanation. So this way, when you're presenting this and you're saying, hey, I think we need to we need to increase prices based on this and this and that, you want the AI to basically give you that information, right? To like you've seen it and it makes sense to you, but you now need to maybe you put it in a deck or something or some type of, executive document, whatever it is, however, whatever the format is that you need to deliver it in. But now you have that, not only do you have that data and that recommendation, but now you have the reasons why, right? So you always want to make sure that you add that in, right? So I hope this was helpful. So much more to cover when it comes to Notebook LM. Make sure that you share, follow, like, do all the things. Um, Make sure you follow me, come back because I will be doing a lot of these, especially with artificial intelligence. How do you apply it to your operation? Always it comes down to your bottom line. So protect your profit. I'll see you in the next one.